MGK has caused controversy by being named as the halftime performance for the Clash at the Coliseum. Jim DeGroot has some thoughts on who he thinks is going to be in the 15 and the 16 car next season. And NASCAR has extended its talks on when they're going to get the agreement done for the charters. Let's get into it. Coming up next. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing good today. All right, NASCAR caused a little bit of a stir when they named MGK as the halftime performance for the Clash at the Coliseum. Some people are way too happy. Some people are way too mad. It's sort of polarizing down the middle. I don't have any real familiarity with MGK other than the fact that he dated the chick from the Transformers movies, and he did, the main thing I've seen from him, he played Tommy Lee in the Motley Crue movie on Netflix, and he did a pretty good job there. I thought he did good work there, but musically, I don't know anything about him, so it's going to be an absolutely clean slate for me when I'm watching it. So if he does a good job on the concert, I'll be able to say he does a good job without any bias. And same thing, if the concert doesn't go well, I will have no bias. And when that happens, I will be able to look at it with no bias. But definitely a lot of people had some thoughts about it, and I'll leave it at that. Jim DeGroot of Motorsport.com thinks he knows who might be going in that Ware Racing Ford. He wrote, Ware Racing Ford, there's been a lot of discussion about Kaz Grala running most, if not all, of the 2024 Cup season in Ware Racing's second full-time entry, but so far no announcements to that effect have been forthcoming. Other names tied to that ride include Ryan Newman, Cole Custer, who will compete full-time in Xfinity again in 2024 with SHR, and Cody Ware, who was recently reinstated by NASCAR after a suspension. He went on further to talk about the Kaulig Racing number 16. While A.J. Allmendinger has returned to full-time competition in the Xfinity Series season in 2024, Kaulig still plans to run 2 full-time Cup teams. Allmendinger will run the number 16 at Daytona and likely some additional races throughout the year as the team appears to be set to run various drivers. Other names in the mix for appearances in the 16 could be Ty Dillon, Josh Williams, and perhaps Matt DiBenedetto. The team won at the Charlotte Roval during the 2023 Cup playoffs with Allmendinger taking the checkered flag. So we will do the Ware Racing one first. I think Ware Racing is going to put a lot more effort in this season just by the fact that they hired Justin Haley to be their full-time driver. I think that shows a lot of progress. The fact that they hired Ryan Newman last season to have some spot-off races to try to probably elevate that organization to another level. They have the agreement with RFK. And putting Kaz Grala in there, I think, is a great move. The one time Kaz Grala drove top-level Cup equipment was at the Charlotte Roval, filling in for an injured Austin Dillon, and he finished in the top 10. I want to say he finished 7th there off the top of my head. I didn't go look that up before I made this, but I just remember he ran really well there. So we know he can get the job done. We know he drove for the money team. The money team I would put Ware Racing above the money team as far as performance goes. So we won't be able to tell anything with what he did over there at the money team. But an elevated Ware Racing and Kaz Grala, if this rumor is true, of course, I think that's a good pick. That's a good fit. Him and Justin Haley, I think, could do some things over there. Now, the other names on the list, let's take a look at them. Ryan Newman, if Ryan Newman is the guy, I don't think Ryan Newman's going to run another full season. It's just my feeling and my thoughts that he doesn't want to look at another super speedway. I think he's happy with running a partial season until he finally retires from doing racing and stuff like that. So I don't think he wants to see another Talladega or Daytona. So I don't see Ryan Newman ever doing a full-time season, but that's just my thoughts on that. Cole Custer. Now, like I said, if Ryan Newman is the driver, he's probably going to be part-time. So you slide Cole Custer in there and get some races. I like Cole Custer's talent. I'm big on Cole Custer. I think he came to the Cup maybe a little bit too early. But that being said, he won the championship in Xfinity last season. He has shown in Xfinity that he's a really good driver. He's got a win in the Cup Series. He got that good restart at Kentucky, got a Cup win. So I think Cole Custer is a good driver. If they slide him in on a part-time schedule, it does two things. It's going to pique my interest, one, because I think Cole Custer is a good driver, but it's going to pique my interest in another way because maybe Stewart-Haas Racing and Ford are back on the same page. Tony Stewart has been critical of Ford in the past. In various forms. Just look at some of the comments he's made. I'm not going to get into all that, but it would set, because RFK has the alliance with Ware Racing and Cole Custer drives for Stewart-Haas, if that was a combination, it might be a sign that Stewart-Haas Racing and Ford are at least patching things up or maybe negotiating to keep Stewart-Haas Racing as a Ford team, because obviously the rumors are out there that Stewart-Haas Racing might be looking at another manufacturer. And then finally, Cody Ware. No matter how you feel, some people feel one way or the other about the Cody Ware deal. At the end of the day, he was deemed to have not done anything. He's been reinstated by NASCAR, so that's all we can say about that, or that's all I'm going to say about that. So, but it would make logical sense. He is the son of Rick Ware, so Cody Ware driving that car, I mean, would make obvious and logical sense. There is, in my opinion, there is a possibility. I think you're probably going to see all of these drivers at some point drive the Rick Ware Racing car. I don't think they're going to have one driver for the full season. That's just my gut feeling on this. But if it is one driver for the full season, it looks like, according to this rumor, it's going to be Kaz Grala. As far as the Kaulig deal goes, I think he's, basically, we know it's going to be multiple drivers in there, so I think all the drivers he named off, there's a good chance we see them have at least one race in it. We know AJ Allmendinger is going to be in there. Matt DiBenedetto, like he's already said he signed something, so Matt DiBenedetto over there in that car, that seems to be like it would be a good fix, or a good fit, I should say, and that's all I'm going to say about Matt DiBenedetto, because some people, including myself, are exhausted on it. I'm just waiting until I hear official confirmation on that. But then all of the other drivers, of course, that you might see over there, we know Ty Dillon might get a shot over there, and we know for sure that Josh Williams, he's already driving for them in the Xfinity Series, so yeah, we know he's going to be over there. One name I would throw in there additionally that he didn't include, I would throw Austin Hill into that mix. I think Austin Hill driving that car part-time was probably part of the reason that he re-signed with RCR. So I think RCR has worked out something with somebody. I feel like it's Kaulig for him to drive, Austin Hill to drive a car next season at the Cup level, because that's the only way I see Austin Hill re-signing is if RCR found him at least a few spot Cup starts until he gets to the Cup Series. Found this via J-Ski. NASCAR and its Premier Series teams have agreed to extend their charter renewal negotiations window after the prior one lapsed at the end of December. The racing circuit and teams are attempting to figure out a new governing framework, with the main issues needing to be solved, including the amount of money being offered by NASCAR, how they'll split it, and whether the charters could become permanently owned by teams. At the moment, teams only control the charters through the end of the current 9-year charter agreement that started in 2016 and expires December 31st, 2024. 5 people familiar with the matter confirmed that the sides had extended the negotiating window, with 2 noting through January. The deal wouldn't start until January 1st, 2025, but NASCAR may want to avoid having the topic become a distraction once the season begins in February. NASCAR and the Race Team Alliance declined comment. So, a lot to cover there. First off, the owners want more money. I think that that's not going to be an issue. I don't think the money is actually the sticking point at this point. We've heard comments from Steve Phelps in the past saying the money part of it is figured out. The sticking point in this deal seems to be the charter agreement itself. So I think the money part of it is handled, so I'm going to skip over that. So you also see in that article that the charter agreement as it currently stands runs out in 2024. What the owners are pushing for is permanent ownership of these charters, and I think that that is a fair stance from them. They've paid all this money for these charters. If NASCAR somehow revokes the charters or whatever NASCAR wants to do with these charters, which I'll get to in just a minute, the owners have to be like, what did we pay all this money for? Is this like the highest fee ever just to participate in NASCAR at that point? So I can see where the owners want to extend the charter. Not only that, but when the owners want to sell out, they have something that they can sell out to another team. So when they want to retire and move away from the sport, they have something that they can, retire and move away from the sport with. So now let's look at why NASCAR might want to retain control of the charters, if not do away with the charter system altogether. I think when NASCAR put this together, it made sense to them logically. However, what I think they didn't factor in is, well, they gave the owners too much power in NASCAR's opinion. They literally, by making these charters, basically formed their own union for the teams. Like the teams they basically unionized the teams by coming up with this charter deal. So from NASCAR's perspective, they've always wanted total control of the sport. I think they realized they gave the teams too much control. So I think that is the first issue that NASCAR wants to either do away with the charters or retain some type of control over the charters. The second issue being, and I guess some people would group this with control, but the second issue being NASCAR can't technically, if somebody owns something, right? If one of these teams owns a charter, NASCAR can't technically strip them of the charter. NASCAR has talked about they could relegate teams and take their charter away if they don't perform well. Well, if a team doesn't perform well but they own the charter, there's not really a whole lot NASCAR can do. Now, a lot of people like to point out in the NBA, even though owners own teams, they have been able to force an owner out. Most notably, Donald Sterling, former owner of the Clippers, they forced him out of an ownership role, but they did that because he violated a code of conduct that he signed to become an owner. So they could force him out of being an owner, but they couldn't outright take the team from him. They just made him stop being an owner. So this is the type of issue that NASCAR doesn't want to run into. So I feel like they want to have control over the charters going forward. But if the owners own the charters outright and something like that happened, or let's just say a team didn't perform the way that NASCAR would like them to perform, let's just say that somebody owns a charter and they're going out there and using it as a starting part for a financial purpose, and NASCAR wanted to get rid of them, NASCAR wouldn't have a leg to stand on. Like, it would have to be an extreme case, like I just pointed out with that NBA case. So NASCAR wanting to retain control seems to be the overall issue holding this whole deal up as to why they can't get the deal done. NASCAR doesn't want to relinquish control of the charters that these teams paid millions and millions of dollars to acquire. And just to finish up the final thoughts on this, I think it's a good thing that they're extending the negotiating process. They need to get this deal done. They need to get it hammered out, because it's doing two things. If it lingers on, it's going to be a story throughout the season, and it's going to be a negative story. And the other thing it's doing, it's holding up anybody else like Dale Jr. Like, we'll just throw him out there because he's the biggest name. It's holding up him from joining the Cup Series. He wants to see how this deal plays out before they can make a logical business move as to whether or not they should or shouldn't buy a charter and run a full-time Cup Series team. So those are going to be the two biggest things that they need to look at, because that's why they need to get this deal done, aside from the other things that I already mentioned. And a few final thoughts to wrap it up. Stage cautions are back for the road courses. NASCAR cut that deal in half. And there's two thoughts on the stage cautions situation, or whatever you want to call it. The first school of thought is we don't need stage cautions at road courses because it eliminates and ruins all of the strategy. I'm in that particular camp, so I'm going to make that argument first. You can't, once you break it down into stages, it's a ABC race. It's a very technical race. You know exactly what you're going to do for stage one. You're going to stay out. In stage two, you're going to pit early to get track position for the third stage. And in stage three, you're going to race your race, and you know exactly when you need to make your pit stop there. It's a very ABC technical race. There's no strategy to it. Everybody's got to have, basically, if you want to win the race, you've got to have the same strategy. There are a few people who just want to max out points. So if you want to max out points, you know exactly what your strategy is. So from that perspective, it takes all the strategy out of the race. It takes the team element out of the race. So a lot of people don't like it, myself included. And the reason I say this is that one of the best stories last season was Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell locking himself into the playoffs, especially because Denny Hamlin elevated the story even bigger, because Denny Hamlin made his, on his podcast, his 16 predictions, and he says, no chance Michael McDowell gets into the playoffs, right? And Michael McDowell did the ultimate clapback by winning the race and said, hey, I'm in the playoffs, I proved you wrong. So that was one of the better stories from last season, and now with stages in this, it's going to make it highly unlikely that something like that ever happens again. It's just another way that the smaller teams, the more underfunded teams, you're taking, in my opinion, an opportunity away from them to pull an upset or something like that, because as we know, super speedways and road courses were their best opportunities to throw the Hail Mary and get the win, and now you've taken away the road courses, so now it's only going to be super speedways where the underfunded teams can, show what they're capable of doing. On the flip side of that, the other side of the argument is, well, as you saw in the Michael McDowell race, it was really boring to us because there were no cautions, the field never got bunched up and stuff like that. So that is the other side of the argument. Some people, as much as they actually complain about stages and stuff like that, or stage breaks, I should say, and stuff like that, they actually do want to see the field bunched up. And basically at the end of it, they want to see a sprint to the finish. So that is the counter argument, and that's completely reasonable from their perspective because they like that type of racing. So you've got two schools of thoughts on it. I'm not saying one is right or wrong. I'm just saying I lay in the first camp where you just let the best team win and you don't put any unnecessary breaks in there for other cautions. The other thing, random cautions coming out are more exciting because you can't plan for them. So like I said where I stand, so I'm just going to leave it at that. All right, and one final thing before we jump off here. Lawless Allen going to be full-time with the Remy brothers next season. They got that deal done for the Truck Series, so that's where he will be. And top 10 name. I like Lawless Allen, the name. So top 10 name, him and Jack Wood in my top 10 of current driver names across all 3 series. All right, that's all I got for you on this one. If you made this far, I would love to have your subscription. If you got a question, comment, or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section. I would love to read those most of the time. And if you already are subscribed to the channel, you know I appreciate you all as well. I've got a merch store, so if you want to support the channel, check out the link in the description. It is much appreciated. And other than that, thanks for your time. Peace.